Hey guys, this is part 3 of our milk bread experiment series. Welcome back. Last time we tested a direct comparison of the Yudane and Tongzong technique borrowing from Princess Bamboo. And we didn't really find a strong or striking difference between the two methods. So we thought maybe we should ask the question, does using a starter even matter at all? So today we are going to test one recipe that does use a starter and one that does not. We are going to test Josh Weissman's dinner roll using the Hokkaido or the Tongzong method, and then Inga Lam's milk bread that does not use a starter whatsoever, and see if one significantly is preferred over the other. Now, another interesting thing to note is that even though Josh uses the Tongzong, his hydration percentage is actually much lower than Inga's. So that may be another factor to consider. Also, Inga uses dry milk powder. So that is another one of those secret ingredients in baking that might help out with texture. So let's go to the kitchen and see what happens. First, we're going to do Josh Weissman's recipe. Start by greasing your pan and set that aside. Then make your tongzong by mixing 20 grams of flour, 27 grams of water, and 60 grams of milk in a pan. On medium heat, cook it until it becomes a smooth paste. Once it thickens, go ahead and remove it from the heat and set it aside to cool. Then you're going to bloom your yeast. Put your 9 grams of yeast in warm milk, give that a stir, and let that sit. Then in your stand mixer, combine 320 grams of flour, 3 grams of salt, and 56 grams of sugar. Then slowly pour in your yeasty milk and let that combine on low. Then crack in 1 egg, continuing to mix on low, and then add your tongzong and increase the speed to about medium-low until everything is well mixed. Finally, add in your butter and mix until combined or smooth, about 5 to 7 minutes. Then remove the dough from the stand mixer onto your work surface. Here's where we shape it into a bowl. You can do this by circling it on the table, or if it's too sticky like ours, you can simply kind of work it and tuck it into itself until it becomes round and smooth. Once it's shaped, place it in an oiled bowl and cover it and set it aside to rest for about 1 to 2 hours, or until it's doubled in size. To check if it's ready, do the finger test. Dust your finger with flour and then give it a poke. If you find the belly button, then it's ready. Then punch down your dough and scrape it out onto your work surface. Then we're going to divide the dough into 2 pieces, and then reshape them into bowls and then set them aside to rest again for about 15 to 30 minutes, or until they double in size. Then we're going to scrape them out again and then shape them for the loaf pan. Separate your pieces and then flatten them out and then basically fold them in thirds, one way and then also in the opposite direction of your first folds. Then pinch the edges to seal it and then load up your loaf pan. Once you get both guys in, go ahead and cover and allow to rise one more time, about 45 to an hour or until it doubles. Then apply your egg wash and bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 25 to 30 minutes. Ours rose a little too much and got trapped in the oven, so that's why it's squished. Okay, on to Inga's recipe. Start by greasing your loaf pan and setting that aside. Then bloom your 3 grams of yeast in 180 grams of warm milk. Then in your stand mixer, combine 250 grams of flour, 30 grams of sugar, and 3 grams of salt. Then slowly add your yeast and milk until a dough forms. Then mix on medium-low until it fully combines. Then add your softened butter and mix for another 5 to 7 minutes or until the dough becomes smooth and stretchy. Then we'll remove the dough from the stand mixer onto our work surface and shape it into a bowl or a ball by circling it on the table. Once you've got that smooth, round-looking ball, go ahead and put it in an oiled bowl and cover it to rest for about 45 to an hour or until it's doubled in size. Once again, use the finger test to check the dough. If it's ready, go ahead and punch it down, flatten it, and then divide it in half. Then take those halves and reshape them into bowls once more. Don't worry if they're not super perfect. Once you have both of the bowls, go ahead and place them back into your oiled bowl, cover it, and rest for another 15 to 30 or until doubled in size. Then we're going to shape them for the actual loaf. Flatten your pieces and then fold them into thirds one way and then again perpendicular to the first folds. Or you can just roll it up like we did here. Then pinch those edges sealed and load up your loaf pan and cover again for another rest of about 45 to an hour. Then apply your egg wash and then bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 25 to 30 minutes or until golden brown. Remove it immediately from the loaf pan and allow to cool on a rack. Okay, so those turned out quite different. Josh's loaf was quite a bit taller, I should say, than Inga's, and it actually rose so much in the oven that it hit the heating coils and then kind of got stuck. So when we pulled it out, it kind of tore and then the bread deflated. So that's kind of why it's weirdly squished looking. That's not from the recipe. That's actually what happened in the oven. However, I will say that both breads are pretty tasty. They use quite a bit of sugar, so that's different compared to the earlier recipes that we tested. So they're a little bit reminiscent of like Hawaiian bread. So if that's your jam, these recipes are something you should definitely try. We did find that Josh's was a little bit too sweet for our taste. Both breads had this really interesting texture that, as they are more like rolls, I think, dinner rolls, they didn't really tear so much as they just broke, which is kind of interesting. And then Josh's texture also did have a little bit more of that like gumminess that melts in your mouth, doesn't have a chew, whereas Inga's did have the chew and a little bit more of like a, general density that was really nice. So I can imagine that if we had formed them as like little rolls as opposed to the loaf, it would be like really tasty and probably perfect as it is in that recipe. Yeah, so I think we've kind of determined that, not surprisingly, the starter does make a huge difference in terms of the height and fluffiness, but we will also test for storage and see if the starter helps the bread hold moisture and last longer, as is supposed quality of using a starter. So next time we are going to compare all of the recipes together. We're going to look at each spread. We're going to look at the crumb. We're going to compare day 1 to day 2 to day 7. We're going to also look at slicing the bread and then freezing it right after you bake it, and then eating it a week later. If that makes a difference, because that's what some people suggest for keeping your bread fresher. Yeah, so we're going to compare all of these things and look at the breads in detail next time we get together and determine our final picks and the best milk bread recipe out there. All right, if you guys liked it, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're following along on this journey, and let us know if you have any questions or other recipes that maybe we should test. Otherwise, find us on Cene. Our community is there and we love talking with you guys about anything at all. So we'll catch you on the next video or on Cene. All right, guys, bye.